So in this video, we are going to continue the summary of this poem. We have seen the introduction of the poet and poem. Also, we have seen the ninth stanza of this poem. And in this video, we are going to study the stanza number 10th. See, in this stanza, the voices in the poet's mind were still saying to him that if he were not afraid, he would have killed the snake. The fears were present in the back of his mind. This stanza further elevates the tension of the internal struggle of the poet in the eyes of the reader. Stanza number 11, the poet admits that he was afraid of the snake, that he was utterly scared at the sight of him, but even so, the poet felt honored at the same time that the snake had chosen his house to have a drink of water and had come all the way from the bowels of the earth. The poet here sees the snake not as an unwelcome intruder but as a guest who had come seeking what he calls his hospitality. So, in this stanza, we come to means in this both stanza we come to know that poet was in the dilemma to kill or not to kill. One thing, one side of his mind is telling him to kill, the second is telling him that not to kill. In the 11th stanza, he admits he didn't kill the snake because he is afraid. But even so, he is afraid, but he feels honor that he likes the snake. One thing. Second thing, the snake have chosen his own house to drink the water. So that's why he feel honor. And he think that poet thought that snake is not an intruder here, but he is a welcome guest for the poet, and that's why he is happy. Stanza 12. In stanza 12, the snake drank with much satisfaction and pacified himself. Then he lifted his head slowly in a dreamy fashion like that of a drunken man. He flickered his tongue again. The poet here uses the simile like a forked knife on ear to relate the darkness of the snake's tongue. Forked knife on ear. The snake licked his lips, looked around, and very slowly started moving away from the trough. Here again, a simile is used in looked around like a god. Looked around like a god because the snake was carefree and least bothered about the fact that a mortal human being was waiting for his turn into the trough as if he was not seeing it. He began climbing the wall face of the poet's house to exit the place. The snake's movement is here described as very slow and languid in contrast to how snakes are generally portrayed. Perhaps this is because the day was very hot and it was exhausted, or that the poet simply wants the snake to stand out as different from other snakes, or even that he was so engrossed in viewing the snake that he could see every single small detail and aspect. Stanza 13. The snake started The snake started retreating. He put his head in a hole in the wall of the poet's house. He slowly crawled, moving his body behind him and entering further inside. Here, the poet uses a curious expression, snake easing his shoulders, to mean easing his way inside the hole. The poet witnessed a sort of horror and protest as he saw him sneaking his way slowly inside the dark hole. The snake was deliberately going inside the darkness, and the poet almost wished him to stay. We can see that the poet is transfixed by the snake. Stanza 14. The poet looked around himself and put his pitcher down. He picked up a log of wood which was lying around and threw it forcefully at the trough in a desperate attempt to make the snake stop from going into the darkness. Means in this stanza we come to know that poet tries to kill the snake. Stanza 15. The poet, when recounting the tale, is unsure is the log hit the snake. The poet, when recounting the tale, is unsure is the log hit the snake. He, however, believes that it most probably did not. But as he threw the log, the part of the snake that was trailing behind him suddenly convulsed in a rapid motion. Log means what we can say a stick or a wood which that poet threw to kill the snake. It twisted and came up close to itself, and in another moment was gone. The motion of the snake was as fast as lightning, and he disappeared in a second. In a second, the poet stood alone in the instant's afternoon with fascination, gazing at the hole into which the snake had disappeared. Stanza 16. The poet straightway regretted what he had done. He thought of it as a paltry, vulgar, and mean act, and he scorned himself for it. The poet is ashamed at what society has taught him to kill innocent life without any thought. He despised himself and his instinct and his accursed human education, which led him to believe that the snake must be killed. Stanza 17. The poet compares his situation with the poem Albatross by Samuel Taylor Coleridge, in which the sailor kills an albatross and regrets his act, wishing he wouldn't have done so. He wishes that the snake would come back to him. Stanza 18. The snake seemed to the poet like a king, in fact, a king in exile. The poet is here glorifying the snake by calling him a king in exile uncrowned in underworld. The snake is indeed a magnificent and powerful animal who rules over the soil. Now the poet feels that the snake should be crowned, should be given the importance it deserves. The last stanza, stanza 19. In this manner, in the last stanza, the poet concludes by saying that he missed a chance of meeting with one of the lords of life and must now apologize for his own lack of concern and his petty behavior with the snake. So, this is the summary of this poem that we have ended here. Thank you.